we're living here and now. We have everything we need. We have all the power we need. We have all the influence we need to create a beautiful reality for ourselves, for our families, but for every single person. So the more people who are equipped with the right skills and guided on a path to shedding off the conditioning that they've had over the decades and really stripping themselves back down to that core essence and connecting with that in the here and now, the more people will benefit around the world, because we're all connected. And so we can create a ripple from the little communities that you have, that I have, that Karen has, all the great spiritual teachers. We're creating a ripple effect here.
Welcome to Alignment Adventures. This is a podcast where we explore what it means to live a fulfilling, aligning, and present life. I'm your host, Linda Tanner, and I am so grateful that you are here. Hello, my loves, and welcome back to Alignment Adventures. I am so excited that you are here. We have another interview today with Lewis Hugh. This is an interesting interview and something new. He's actually the son of another interviewee I had on almost a year ago, and that is Karen Doherty. So Lewis Hugh is just such a bright light that we need in this world right now. I absolutely loved our time together and our conversation. And I just want to say, I have to pinch myself sometimes that I get to have these conversations with these beautiful souls all over the world. Lewis is currently in Scotland, and just hearing him talk about his journey was so nourishing for my soul. And it was like he was giving me all the precise reminders that I needed in that moment. So Lewis Hugh is a soul coach and spiritual guide and founder of the Yin Yang Soul. And we cover such a variety of topics, from what it was like living in a family and having a childhood where your mother was deeply connected to the spiritual realm and spiritual growth and what that was like for him. We also cover his journey and how some of his lowest lows gave birth to his awakening and what he embodies today. We talk about how we're all expressions of spirit, just in our own flavors, which is so needed because what resonates with one soul may not resonate with another. So we need all the different flavors in full expression. He talks about common problems that he's seeing with his clients that reflect what is going on in mass consciousness. We discuss how to connect to our own power, and he also goes into his perception of reality and the game, as we call it, which I find so fascinating. Of course, we talk about tips on how to be present and how to connect with your soul and your intuition. And he also touches on finding our own purpose. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and get into the conversation. I know you guys are going to truly love this one. Lewis, thank you so much for coming on Alignment Adventures. Already I can tell this is going to be an incredible conversation. So thank you so much for your time and energy.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, we'll start with the usual question, and I'm so excited to hear all the answers, but who is Lewis Hugh?
Lewis Hugh is in the innocent child sort of way, a young boy from Scotland who just has the purest intention to help and serve, and unfortunately went through some really hard times growing up as a teenager and into early adulthood, where we kind of fell on homelessness, drug abuse, experienced toxic relationships, and just had a sort of 7-year period that was so much out of alignment that physical health was affected, mental health was affected, everything was just kind of everywhere. And so had to learn through knowledge and acquiring knowledge through books and looking into different faiths to try and get myself back on track, and eventually got there, started a career and looking after people in different ways, and then started my own business later on after getting married just a few years ago.
Wow. It's so cool to see like the dichotomy or the contrast in life, right? The lowest lows sometimes give birth to the highest highs, which I'm so excited to dive more deeply into, and also
absolutely.
bring in your upbringing. I'm so curious how that played a role. But before we get into all that, I'll get to my second question. What does living in alignment mean to you?
To me, it means being able to experience this human condition, this earth plane, in the fullest way, in joy and in light, guided by what your soul wants for you, and what you want at that soul level. So being able to play the game, but know that it's a game, and use your inner wisdom to guide your decisions and do the very best with your life that you can.
I love that answer. It is a game. We can dive
Yeah.
so deeply into that. But before we do, I'm just very curious. I'm sure I mentioned this in the intro, but you are the son of Karen Doherty, who I had on almost, I believe it was a year ago. So very
Wow.
synchronistic. I know, time is an illusion, right?
Sure.
So I'm very interested how that played a role in your life growing up. You said that you obviously grew up in like a spiritual household, or a household that, definitely had aspects of self-development and exploration. So how did that play a role in your childhood and then going into your adolescence and the other things that you experienced?
It had a massive influence because the kind of concepts that my mum Karen was working with at the time, although they were kind of alien to me at the age I was at, I didn't really fully understand them. I didn't understand what her work was at that stage. But I was having, experiences with spirit from a very young age. And it's been a kind of thing that's run in the family for generations, as I'm sure Karen mentioned during her interview. But it really brought things to light that perhaps I wouldn't have learned until I was in my late 20s, 30s. So I feel it equipped me quite early on with the certain skills that I would need to tap into my own spirituality. And then eventually, there's things that me and Karen agree on and don't agree on. And that's the beauty of it, is that we've gone, her journey has fueled my journey. And so it was a great privilege to grow up learning about things like meditation, spirit communication, and just learning that there was something greater than what we were perhaps being taught in school.
Totally. I find that so interesting, just how that plays a role in our life growing up. The religion in itself has always been a fascinating topic to me. So I feel
Absolutely.
like in your childhood and adolescence, maybe you were exposed to, were your parents like very open, like, here's what we do, here's what we believe. Like you said, you kind of like didn't totally understand, which I could get that, like as a little kid being like, oh, my mom is psychic, like she's talking to spirit, like I kind of understand, but not really. Were they pretty open to like all of them? Because I know that later on you explored your own journey with Zen Buddhism and Taoism, which
Yeah.
we can talk about those a little bit. How was that journey from like being open, or if they were open to finding those things?
I think I encountered my own challenges with that, because especially in the school years, when they asked, what do your parents do, having to explain to my peers at that age that, oh, my mum speaks to your past loved ones, was a really big concept, because it opened up to so many other questions. And certain times it kind of made you vulnerable, because then you were sort of exposing your own vulnerability spiritually. And so it was a difficult thing to kind of go with in that respect. But then in the other way, I mean, mum's work proved so much to me about the afterlife and about our own spirituality and how powerful we are within ourselves. So that was enough to then lead me on to find new thinkers and people who would take that idea further. And so, although I've grown up and learned psychic art and learned how to use my intuition, I do it in a different way, to the way perhaps mum does as a medium. And that to me is beautiful, because we're exploring the various manifestations of that power.
Totally. That's what I was going to say earlier. I was like, I know I had something I was going to say and it dropped out. You are expressing it in like your own flavors. And I agree with what you said. That is so beautiful and so needed, because like the way Lindsay says it, or the way that Lewis says it, or Karen says it, resonates with so many different groups of people, which is what we need to like help people understand this connection that I'm sure we all have on some degree,
Yeah.
some more than others. And I find it interesting. You said it kind of runs in your family, which is such an interesting concept as well. So tell us a little bit about what you do today, like how you help people just connect back with themselves. Like, is there anything specific you feel like is especially needed in this time? It definitely feels like we're in an interesting time. I mean, I don't know, just do people always say that? But it definitely does feel like we're in an interesting time. What are some of the things that you focus on now that could really help a lot of us step back into that connection with our soul.
I think it's changed greatly over. I agree with you, Lindsay. There's a shift going on just now, and I feel like I've been saying that repeatedly over the last maybe 2 months. But there seems to be a massive shift. And
Yeah.
4 years ago when I started, the problems that people were coming to me with then are vastly different to what they have now.
Mm.
And there seems to be certain synchronicities or commonalities between each student that comes forward and the things they're experiencing: emotional overwhelm, heightened sensitivity to certain energies in certain situations, so and being triggered easier. So the way that I've now, come forward to help them is by offering the 12-week programs in which we connect on a soulful level. There's 3 different pathways we can go down, either to focus on your personal development, on your spiritual or psychic development, or to help those who also have spiritual businesses and want to try and serve their following better. So it's really just helping people navigate the shift that we're in, whatever that is and wherever it's going to end up. My personal feeling on it is that once the shift is over, there will be more need for spiritual services and for person-centered services.
Yeah, I could see that, because it kind of does seem like there's more and more, which makes sense because we're going to need more and more. Like, people are unsure just how to navigate those things. And I always come back to, I started out in education, and it always kind of blows my mind that, like, we're not taught how to deal with our emotions right off the bat. Like, that's such a thing that we have to kind of figure out on our own, or, hope our parents can teach us those things. But I'm curious. You said a lot of the people coming to you now have similar problems. What are you seeing? Is it a lot of that emotional, like just unsure of how to deal with like emotional heaviness, or is it other things that you're seeing in this time and space?
The main issue seems to be, I know I need to change. I want to change, but I'm scared of the overwhelm of that change. And every time I try to change, I become overwhelmed emotionally and have to back down. That seems to be, there are obviously additional factors to everybody's individual situation, but at the core of it, that seems to be the issue just now, is people can sense this change, but it's so powerful that they don't know how to navigate it or what to do with it.
I feel like you're talking to me directly sometimes. But what is your advice, or like, what are your insights on that? Like, the fear of change or just overwhelm. I feel that a lot recently, just like overwhelmed by, it's so interesting you said what you said, because I almost felt that the other day. It's almost like there's so much that's wanting to come through. It's overwhelming. And then you just kind of shut down, which I feel like a lot of people are there.
Yeah.
So like, what are some tips to, like, I guess, dip our toe in to not being overwhelmed and connecting with that probably massive power that every single one of us has within us?
Yeah. I think the first thing to understand is the power is the same regardless. The power can't be altered, it can't be changed. It is the same consistent thing running through at all times. How we react to that power is where the issue lies. And so if we're aligned with our soul, and we know that deep down what our soul wants for us, and that our soul's there to care for us and nurture us and navigate that growth, then we'll react in an appropriate way. If we go the other way and we let the ego step in and we become anxious about it, then we'll act in a less helpful manner. I think navigating this, like we said about the whole kind of game, this is a game.
Yes.
We cannot assign too much meaning to what we're experiencing. We just have to experience it.
Yeah.
And so when people allow this power to come through them, and let's face it, it's an emotion, it's energy, it has to keep going, it has to keep moving. We can't hold it. It's like trying to hold water. We have to let it through us. And when people do that, they'll start to cry. And to them, crying has negative connotations. And so they'll start to let the ego come in and say, well, you're upset and you shouldn't cry, and back down, and that's it.
So So true. I can't tell you how many times people have cried in front of me and said sorry, just because that's like
Yeah.
the
Why?
societal norm. And I'm always like, never apologize for crying. Like, I'm like, get it out, cheering them on.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um, I try to do that too. And it is so nice once you get a good cry out, like let that emotion through. I was talking about this with my husband recently, and he heard this on I think it was like a Joe Rogan podcast, but saying like this generation really doesn't know how to like let emotion run through us. Like we just
Mm,
get stuck there. Like
mm,
we feel an emotion and we just like ruminate in it. I don't know if we're just too much in our mind or our ego about that emotion, or we just don't have the
yeah.
tools. But it's so interesting how much suffering comes through that when really like the path of least resistance is just like feel it, cry it out, go and do what you need to do, and then like continue on. It's so weird.
I was just chatting to a client before coming on with yourself about the idea that this client had spent 2 days in a situation that hasn't even happened yet. 2 days living in the future, creating and catastrophizing, and causing herself real physical and emotional harm because the brain will believe what you tell it.
Yeah.
Um, and now looking back, it's laughable that she spent 2 days in pain because of this, and she can't understand why. It's a beautiful thing, and it's part of the learning experience.
Totally. It is beautiful. It's so beautiful. And also like just the insanity of it sometimes. Like you said, we like live, we
Mm,
create these stories and we feed these stories that aren't even true.
yeah.
And then when you step back and look at it, you're like, this thing hasn't even happened, or it did already happen, but who knows? I'm like, maybe not remembering it the correct way. It was only my perspective. It's just so interesting. Okay, let's talk about the game, like how this is a game, because I find this to be a fascinating topic. Which maybe this is how you mean it, maybe it's not. We can totally just go there and break it down. The fact that this is partially like an illusion. Illusion isn't the word I want to use. What's the word I want to use? Like where it's a game, whatever. It is kind of like this illusion that we think it's real. Like reality seems real to us, but reality is totally not how we perceive it. I've even done a few episodes recently where I like break down like the science behind that, like on
Yeah.
the quantum
Yeah.
physics and all that. So what is your
Well,
perspective on reality and the game? Like what is like actually happening here from your perspective? Why are we here? What's going on? I don't, that's a huge question, but just take it where you want or what feels right.
I think for me personally, I've always been very careful to strike the balance and being in touch with the soul and the spiritual side and having that outlet, being able to connect with nature, meditate, focus on what my soul wants. But then how do I drive that back into the what I would call the constructed reality? Because at the end of the day, everything that we see now has been created by someone, and it seems the motivation to me, it seems, is to cut us off from our power all the more, with mobile phones, televisions, constant, recently released these Apple Vision Pro, these goggles that you can control everything with. So you're literally being cut off from your reality. That's it. Your senses are being occupied, and you're being directed towards something that is just going to give you a constant dopamine hit rather than actually doing the hard work, which is learning, gaining knowledge, passing it on to the next generation, um, and kind of making your great depart into the afterlife.
Yeah.
So to me, that's all there is should be to life, is that we're here to experience it,
Yeah.
but know that the experience itself isn't actually the real deal. You know, that's
Yeah.
it's not the real deal.
Assimilation. That's the word I was looking for.
Great word. Yeah, yeah. No, illusion as well though, because
Yeah.
what's true anymore? What's right and what's wrong? What's true? It's all muddled up.
It really is. And I find it so interesting. Like you said, what is true? You could find evidence for all truths. It seems like
Mm-hmm.
everyone has their own
Mm-hmm.
truth. So then I think that gets overwhelming for people. They try to, like, what is the truth? What's actually happening here with X, Y, and Z? And you find just an overwhelming amount of information pointing in all directions. So how do we connect with our own truth?
I think link back to the discussion we've been having about the idea that if we're living in the past, we're in pain. If we're living in the future, we're anxious.
Yeah.
We're living here and now. We have everything we need. We have all the power we need. We have all the influence we need to create a beautiful reality for ourselves, for our families, but for every single person.
Yeah.
So the more people who are equipped with the right skills and guided on a path to shedding off the conditioning that they've had over the decades and really stripping themselves back down to that core essence and connecting with that in the here and now, the more people will benefit around the world, because we're all connected.
Yes.
And so we can create a ripple from the little communities that you have, that I have, that Karen has, all the great spiritual teachers. We're creating a ripple effect here. But that's it, living in the present moment.
I can feel that when you say it. It's so true, so powerful. And I almost find myself getting into like an angry space when I get angry with how hard it is to be present sometimes, which is like not a helpful place to be angry about it. But I do. It's almost like, why is this so hard? Why is this not my natural state? Probably because we're here to learn it. Like you said, we came here to learn lessons and pass it on. But I feel like recently, I try to do the things, meditate, journal, all the things we talk about on here. Recently, I feel like I have been tapping into a space where it's almost a little bit trippy, where you are like totally in the now. And it's beyond words. And it's been such an interesting thing to just kind of play around with, because, meditation's a word that's thrown around a lot. I don't think there's any wrong way you can do it. But do you have any tips with that? Like starting with meditation and really tapping into that present moment, because it's fleeting. It comes and it goes. I mean, it's always here, but like our presence is fleeting and it comes and it goes. And like people like me that get frustrated with how hard it is to be present, because I know that's where my happiness lies. What are some maybe practical or not practical ways that we can do that more often, especially with meditation?
I think from a mental perspective, understanding that what you need from your inner wisdom and from your soul will come at exactly the right time. There's never anything that's wrong in your life. There's not a single rock or great blade of grass that's in the wrong place on this whole world. So having not only believing that, but having faith in that, because faith is what's going to pull you through to your awakening. Awakenings will happen little bit at a time, as and when you're ready for them. So as you say, they come and they go, and that's frustrating because you'll get a glimpse of it and you'll feel so at home, and then it's gone. And you're back to the daily grind, and you're back to life as it was, and you feel so frustrated. So having faith that will continue to happen until you pass. That is our life journey. The soul can speak to you at certain times. Practically, the big thing with meditation is that people have a very stereotypical image of sitting with legs crossed, perhaps chanting mantras with beads in your hand, etc., etc. Meditation, as you've said, can be anything. So it's finding something that works for you. And at different stages of your awakening, there will be different forms of meditation that work. You will find that maybe journaling or meditation that worked before isn't working so good now. It's because you're past it. You're moving, you're developing. That's a good sign. So the anger is misplaced almost, because the journaling and meditation that you were doing has done exactly what you wanted it to do. It's moved you on. So it's having that faith and finding a practice that resonates with you, and not focusing on whatever else anybody else is teaching you. Focus on what's right for you in that space, in this moment, and the magic will happen.
I love that. I love that advice. And it's so true. Like our evolution, we are always changing and we can get so stuck in a version of ourselves. This is a silly example, but I just felt called to say it. We were watching the Taylor Swift concert on Disney Plus last night. Think what you want about her, but she is such a beautiful example of someone who's evolved and like not gotten stuck in her different like eras, right? Like on a massive who knows, again, who knows what actually is going on there.
Sure.
But like we do, just like her, we have all these different eras and evolutions of our life, and what worked in one stage is not going to work in another stage. And what's working for me is not going to work for you.
Absolutely.
And that's such a powerful thing to say and realize, because of how many times we're like, this worked for me, everyone needs to do it. I know I can get in that space too, because I get so excited. But that doesn't mean it's going to work for everyone else. And it's just like being open and curious and exploring. And something you mentioned a lot is like just that your faith has gotten you through a lot of like your ups and downs. So maybe you want to elaborate a little bit more on that journey, like some of the moments where you really had to tap into those things that you knew to be true for you, and some of the lowest lows, and what was that journey like for you, or that experience like for you?
It was very tough. I put myself in a position during the worst years where I was just completely a shell of a human being. I had no power, I had no soul, I had nothing. I lost weight, I was 7 stone in weight, and I was very, very unwell with autoimmune diseases and everything. But I was at that time fighting all the time. I was constantly fighting against something. It didn't matter what it was. And if anybody ever said to me at that time, "Oh, you've got work to do on yourself, you've got shadows that you need to confront," I said, but I'm busy fighting this at the moment, so I'm just going to neglect that, you know. And so life, everything externally became a pleasant distraction from having to deal with the demons that I'd been harboring. And I suppressed that with drugs. I used a lot of cannabis in the wrong way. I believe it's a beautiful tool, but I misused it. I misused a lot of other substances, and just got myself to a place where eventually something had to change. You know, I had to find something to believe in, and it was at that point that I discovered Alan Watts, and that then led me on to discover Taoism, and that led me on to Zen Buddhism, and all of a sudden it all started to come back. And I think for a while I still believed this stuff, and it was never really moving me on anywhere. I think my faith came when I had an experience with psychedelic therapy later on in later years. And all of a sudden I had this burst of understanding, and everything seemed to just join together in a place where it was as if everything flashed before me, the whole life I'd had and all the struggles I'd been through. And it was like a kind of, I'm okay now. You know, I'm okay. That's happened and it's fine and it's part of who I am. But from today, I'm someone new.
Wow. Powerful.
It
I feel
was,
like I've experienced, again, I've had like tastes and glimmers of this. It's like I've learned all this information. Maybe you were at a certain point of that, like you study it and you learn it, but like the embodying piece, do you feel like all of a sudden it was just like you were like, I'm that person now. Like I've
yeah,
integrated all these things.
yeah, 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 absolutely. And it's at the core message of my service. And, you know, I don't ever guarantee someone a spiritual awakening. Who would I be to do that? I would be playing God. I will guarantee to give you the knowledge and tools that you will be able to use in your awakening, but you can never guarantee when that's going to be. And it takes a certain set of circumstances. You know, it takes a shadow to see the light.
Yeah.
We have to go through that aspect of it as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's so true. I mean, like you said before, it's all like in perfect timing. Everything is exactly the way it's supposed to. So it just is a matter of timing. I said
Yeah.
this to one of my girlfriends the other day, who's also very into all these things. I was like, if we don't figure it in this lifetime, we'll figure it out in the next. And that's like a weird way to look at it, and maybe like a morbid way for some people, but it almost kind of comforts me on a level. Like, it's okay if I don't get it all figured. I feel like I'm
Right.
constantly just trying to figure it all out. And like, you're never going to have it all figured out. And eventually you will figure out the things that you need to at some point when it's right. So,
What's the rush?
yeah.
You know, we're all rushing about, just always trying to be better than what, you know, you are only as good as you are in this moment. And I think you're completely right. In whatever way you want to think about it, you have time. And when you look at it that way, which is a beautiful way to look at it, Lindsay, when you look at it that way, you remove the layer of expectation.
Mm.
And in doing so, you remove the subsequent guilt that you would feel if you didn't meet that expectation. So that just brings it all down to ground level, so that you can just experience it without judgment.
Experience without judgment. So powerful. It's interesting that you say that because that's one of my intentions for this year is to drop expectations, which is proving to be very difficult.
Well, it is. It's a difficult process. Yeah.
We are wired to expect and chase and want things, or maybe we're not wired. We just think we're wired, but
Yeah.
it just is hard to get out of that rat race of like, I can just see myself projecting from what we did all the time with like your career and other stuff into the spiritual aspect of like, I gotta get this, I gotta do that. And it's like, that is not what this is about. It's about, like you said, being present and just experiencing things in the raw, beautiful form that they are. So thank you for those reminders. Now, I'd want to ask you this question because I haven't asked interviewee in a long time, but I just find it to be an interesting question. I'd love to hear your perspective. But what about our purpose? And maybe you've already answered it in some ways. Maybe we've kind of touched on it, but we can just kind of wrap it up in this question or, address it again. But what do you think our purpose is, or how do we find our purpose?
It's an interesting question because I think there's sort of two elements to it, whereas the soul's purpose is to experience this through a set of eyes that has never been seen before, from a different perspective, completely new, with a new set of challenges. When we speak about purpose, it depends on which level we're talking about it. So if we're talking about it on the soul level, then that can be quite easy to tune into and tap into and understand. If we're talking about our purpose as a human, that's far more complex, because then we start dealing with your limiting beliefs, the challenges you've had growing up, the conditioning you've had as a child and through into adulthood, and how that's affecting you now, and what goals and aspirations you have. Where the alignment comes in is usually if we can align to the soul's purpose and just go to that place of pure intent, pure innocent intent, then we can find an occupation in this life that we will find worthy of our time and attention. And usually when people come to me and say, I'm not engaged with my career anymore, I don't enjoy it, I don't speak to my colleagues as the same way we used to speak, and everything just seems out of alignment, we can work it back to, at a soul level, they're not happy doing what they're doing. They're perhaps in sales when they would be better off in healthcare, or that kind of thing. And usually empaths are better off in jobs where they are serving others. So there's usually a sense. So it's that alignment. It's aligning your human choices with your soul's desire.
Which is not always innate to us. Coming back to it.
I think it's innate. I think it's in everybody. Every single human has the power to do this, because there is no human out there who is lesser than another. So if one can tap into this power and use this to benefit mankind, so can another person. The issue is the level of conditioning that those two individuals have been in are different, and the level of pain and suffering they've been in. And if they've not learned the skills to move that energy on, then they're further away from their power than the other person.
Such a beautiful reminder. Yes, everyone's equal playing field. Everyone has the same capabilities. It's just like what we have on top of that. So two questions that just came to mind. How can we start to like peel, and maybe this is a big question, but like start to peel back those layers of conditioning? I know, usually awareness of it is usually a first step. I always say it's like such a key step. But are there other things we can do to just try to help us like just shed those layers, just release it and like leave it behind? Because sometimes I think I've left something behind and then I'm like, oh no, it's still here. So
that's an interesting one. I think acknowledgement of the problematic thought or perception or conditioning that you've undertook. And that usually happens from input from other people. There might be somebody that says something that makes you think a different way, or perhaps think something that you thought was normal is now not known as normal. So that can be a big wake-up call, thinking, wait a minute, everything I've been told has kind of been a lie, or not a lie, but a certain perception. So going to that place where you can start to understand your thoughts and why you have them and where they might have come from,
Mm-hmm.
Also acknowledging that they're a vital part of you because they've got you this far. And
Yeah.
although things haven't quite been working out, you have to give credit where credit's due. You still have come on so far. So acknowledging that part of it. And then there's a few different ways you can try to rewrite the conditioning. You can try to replace it with affirmations and power statements, taking the time to look yourself in the eye in the mirror and look deep into your soul and remind yourself who you are, what power you have. Or you can go down the kind of purge route where you perhaps go to your a beach area or a loch in Scotland or a lake in the States and build a fire and just take some time, connect with nature, give the thought to nature. So this is what I have, this is what I've been given in life. I don't think it's right. Perhaps write it down on a piece of paper and throw it to the flames and then take a dip in the water and cleanse yourself of it. It's very physical things you can do to rid yourself of emotional and mental conditioning.
I would give anything to go to a loch in Scotland right now. And that sounds amazing. I don't know, maybe it's pretty cold by now, but maybe cold would be good. You know what came to mind is, and I'm guilty of this too, is like people just don't give themselves the time and space to like connect. It's almost like they just avoid it. They don't want to go there. And it can be scary to go there. I totally get that. But it's just like gifting yourself that time and space to be quiet, especially in nature. So powerful, no matter where you're at, whether you're in beautiful Scotland or here in the US like me, like just getting outside and being quiet. I love what you said too, like give it to nature. Like you don't have to take it on yourself. Give it to nature and just see what flows from there. That's beautiful, beautiful advice. Now, before I get into my last group of questions, any insights from you on how to like really hear our soul and like determine what is our soul speaking to us versus everything else?
Yeah, because it can be a tricky distinction, and the human mind always jumps in, especially if you get signs and symbols and certain synchronicities in life that you think, oh, that's strange. Why is that popped up now when I just thought about this thing? But your human mind jumps in and says it's a complete coincidence. Pay it no attention. Move on. So you do. But how can we hear the soul? Well, first of all, we have to listen. We have to take the time to listen, and that means no distractions, no Netflix in the background, no TikTok, no scrolling, nothing. Complete. It's the hardest thing to do is sit with yourself. It's the hardest thing to do these days. Hearing the soul, using your five senses. So we have to align the physical self with the spiritual self because they are two together. So using your physical senses, when you connect with your higher self, when you go into that meditative or altered state, when you speak out to God or your higher self or whoever it is you speak to, how do you feel? What do you see? What do you hear? What do you smell? What do you taste? How are the five senses interpreting the information that you're being given from the universe, from the cosmos? Because they will be doing it in some way. For me, it's usually a euphoric feeling in the solar plexus. For some people, it's sort of pins and needles, numbness in the hands, or energy in the hands. So these are all things that the higher self is speaking to you at all times. It's just that there's so much distraction and so much else to occupy our attention that we're not hearing it. So if we want to hear it, we have to listen first and foremost.
So true. I've been getting that nudge so much. It's so easy when I get any break or even when I'm doing something mundane to like put in a podcast. I mean, I even love going back and listening to these beautiful conversations I have, but I've been getting the nudge recently to like, no, like just have silence. And it, like you said, it's hard. It's
so
hard, but like just there's so much noise we can distract ourselves with. So just gifting yourself that time and space of being open and curious. So good.
Absolutely.
So good.
And I think that it's easy to be in the victimhood stage. It's easy to be weak. And so we'll always go with the easier option because our lives are built on convenience and easiness now. So being strong, confronting it, going through it, that's a hard thing to do. And it takes some great strength.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for that reminder. Received. Receive it in my body. I feel like.
Good.
Uh, well, Lewis, I have these last few questions for you, but just
Yeah.
loving this so much already. Thank you so much for your energy.
And
But
I know that's amazing.
so good. Uh, People are listening. They're loving you. They're loving your energy. How can they connect with you, work with you, all the ways? Where can they start?
I think the website yinyangsoul.com, best place to go through. I started this project in 2019 as Yin Yang Coaching and Guidance, and unfortunately, last year we were hit. All the social media accounts were hacked. We lost our complete following, and so I took a year to we gave birth to our son, our first son. So we took the year to experience the first year of parenthood. And so now I'm back. So the social media needs a good drive, so you can find me on social media, but primarily at the website yinyangsoul.com. And everybody gets 30 minutes of my time free, no matter what it is. I don't even care if they are interested in joining the program. If you need
Mm.
spiritual guidance and want that for 30 minutes, book a call.
Beautiful, beautiful. That's such a amazing thing to give to everyone. And we will link everything so you can follow. And
Sure.
congratulations on your son. I also
Thank you.
have a little one, so I know I'm in the thick of
Oh,
that as well.
oh yes, it's an interesting journey.
I keep telling my husband, I'm like, if people are into personal development, like parenting really is like a slap in the face of personal development, whether you're ready for it or not.
Absolutely.
Like they're
Absolutely.
just mirrors back to you. Like deal
Hmm.
with this, deal with, all the triggers. It's so beautiful and so interesting.
Yeah.
My next question, and I just love asking people this and hearing what they say, but what is one of your favorite, I call them alignment activities. It's just activities you love to do. You forget time and space are passing and you just do it because it's so fun for your soul.
So I love to go to a place where there are lots of trees. This doesn't particularly work in the long winter, the long Scottish winter, because they're all branches. But in the spring, summertime, sitting on a bench or on the grass, grounding, shoes off, and allowing the energy to just really lift into me, and watching the trees and relaxing and just watching through the peripheral vision rather than direct vision. So getting all this stuff that's
Mm.
in reality that I would never usually focus my attention on, and allowing that to come in and forgetting what's right in front of me. And it is beautiful. It's almost like one of Van Gogh's paintings, with the swirls, because it all moves in the wind, and it's almost a psychedelic experience without the substance. It's beautiful.
I am going to write that down so I remember to try that next time I'm in nature. That is so interesting. Like to just
Mm,
be playful and curious with that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I've heard people say that. Like, this is a whole nother topic, but like even connecting with like other elementals and spirits outside, they say it's always like the things that you think you see in the corner of your eye. So it's like, don't focus, like what
Yeah.
else is happening? And I can't even imagine like the magic that is happening in your land. I haven't been yet. It's on my bucket list, but I can't. It's just, I'm sure, magical.
Yeah, absolutely. I would recommend a visit to our land anytime. Beautiful, beautiful country.
Yes, hopefully that's happening soon. My last
Good.
question, if you had to give one piece of advice, and I know this can be tricky, but just one piece of advice to anyone on this journey, on this path, maybe they're at their lowest lows, like some of the ones you experienced, or at any point, really, anything that comes to you, one piece of advice.
Your soul is all you have in this world to depend on. It's all you have to navigate the physical world, and that's okay because the soul's connected to everything else. So you've got the backing of years of evolution and information gathering and practice to help you on your journey. So have faith, be patient, and understand that this is not a quick fix. This is a journey that you're embarking on. Love every minute.
Hmm. I feel like patience is a lesson for every single one of us.
Me included, right? Me included. Absolutely.
So, such a beautiful reminder. And you're
Yeah.
right. That seems so true to me too. Like our soul holds so much information that we just have to stop and reconnect and listen to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And people can do that with you in Yin Yang Soul. So yes, we will link all of that in the show notes. Thank you so much, Lewis, for your time and energy. This was a beautiful conversation, divine timing for sure. Just what I needed.
100%. Thank you for the opportunity. It's been beautiful.
Lewis, again, thank you so much for coming on Alignment Adventures. Again, it's just such an honor to get and talk with all these beautiful souls. And I just appreciate your time and presence and wisdom so, so much. So if you want to connect with Lewis, you can go to his website, which is yinyangsoul.com. I will link that in the show notes. And you can also follow along with him on Instagram at Yin Yang Soul Coach. Go and give him a follow there. Like you said, his social media was hacked and he lost all of his followers, which is just crazy. But divine timing, sometimes things have to burn down so you can restart anew. If you are new here, please subscribe. We have about 2 new episodes a month. That's the current pace, but it might be more, it might be less. We just flow with the river over here. And please share this episode with anyone that you think needs to hear these precise, exact reminders. I'm so appreciative anytime you subscribe or share the podcast or even leave a review. That is a free way to help the podcast. I'm just bursting with appreciation and gratitude when you do those things. So that is all we have this week. So I'm sending you all the high vibes, all of my love, and of course, I will see you in the next episode of Alignment Adventures.